All right, so similar start to what we did with the product rule. We're going to first show that you can't just do something that many people assume you can do. So the question is saying does the derivative of the quotient equal the quotient of the derivatives? So on the left-hand side, we need to take the derivative of f of x over the 3x squared, which is g of x. Okay, on the right-hand side, we're going to take the derivative of each one individually and see if the two of them match up. So when we simplify the left, we're taking the derivative of 2/3 x squared, and that derivative would then be 4/3 x. Whereas the right-hand side, when we take the two derivatives individually and then simplify, you get 4/3 x squared. So again, just showing you that for quotient, if you have two things being divided, you can't just take the derivative of the top and the bottom and it equal what the final answer is. So there is a set formula, just like there was for product rule. Obviously, it's going to be different because you're dividing. So the setup for quotient rule, I'm going to write the way to remember first before we actually write it out. And it is a way that sometimes helps many people remember how to do it. So a way to remember the formula, it is low D high, and I'll go over what those mean in a minute. So low D high minus high D low over low squared. Okay, so basically high is the numerator and low is the denominator, and D means derivative. Okay, so low D high minus high D low over low squared. So if I relate that to f of x over g of x, well, it's low D high, so low g of x. D high means the derivative of the numerator, minus high D low, high numerator times D low, derivative of the denominator, all over low g of x squared. So you have to square the denominator. Okay, so it is a little bit more involved, so just be careful with this. But it's definitely doable when you do this type of question. Okay, but again, definitely helps to practice this for sure. Extra practice is always better. So looking at the one problem, we've got our f of x and we've got our g of x. So the quotient rule tells us low D high, so low derivative of the top is 5 minus high 5x minus 2 D low, derivative of the bottom is 2x over low squared. Okay, and the only thing you have to do is you have to distribute the top and simplify. Okay, so the derivative, we get 5x squared plus 5, and also distribute that negative there. So you get negative 10x squared plus 4x. And then last step would just be to make sure that it's totally simplified. So you got one more, so d of dx, you get negative 5x squared plus 4x plus 5 over x squared plus 1 squared for your answer for that one. Okay, it's not asking you to do anything with it, it's just asking you to get the derivative, but just make sure that you follow the quotient rule derivative for that one. All right, last and final problem here. So it's saying find the equation of the tangent. Well, in order to get the equation of the tangent, we need the derivative. In order to get the derivative, we've got to somehow simplify this out. So step one, I'm going to cut a common denominator in my numerator here, which is x. Then I'm going to rewrite that function. So I get 3x minus 1, and that common denominator, I'm going to move that down to the actual denominator itself. Because in order to use the quotient rule, it can only be one item over another item. So quotient rule says low, that's the denominator, d high, which is the derivative of the top, minus high, d low, which is the derivative of the bottom, all over low squared. And again, the biggest thing is you just have to be able to simplify and distribute the numerator. So when you do that, 100% after it's completely simplified, you should end up with negative 3x squared plus 2x plus 5. So just make sure that you're able to get that. I forgot to square the denominator. Make sure the denominator is squared as well. Okay, so you get the derivative. Again, this is the equation for slope. In order to get the equation of the tangent line, we need the equation of the slope. In order to get the slope itself, we're going to sub in our x value. So our slope is then negative 3 times negative 1 squared, 2 times negative 1 plus 5 over negative 1 squared plus 5 times negative 1, and that whole thing is being squared. So remember, this is the equation for slope right here. In order to get the slope, you got to actually sub it in. So now if we simplify here, we get, so this is negative 3, positive 5. Oh, sorry, this is negative 2, not 3. So that gets us 0 over 16, which is just 0. So our slope is equal to 0. Well, that makes things easy. The slope is 0. Your point is negative 1, 1. So when we sub it into y equals mx plus b, b is going to come out to being 1. So again, we don't write y equals 0x plus 1. We're just